It is Monday, the 17th of June, I think. Um, Today, I'm sitting out here in the garden at the moment with a copy of Yeats and a compilation of Celtic fairy tales collected by Joseph Jacobs. Um, and I thought that I would just do a couple random readings and keep a chat open. Let me make sure that I have the chat set right today, because I noticed that a couple times I've had it set incorrectly when I'm on my phone and I don't see all of the chat. So I don't know which one I want to start with or where, but I figured if you're going to read, you might as well read out loud for people that need a break and want to chit chat with other folks or something to listen to on your commute. I took my car to the shop this morning. Oh my God, what an ordeal that was. I got up to go to my chiropractor. I go every Monday morning. And it was when I was driving into town that I remembered, oh God, my brakes made that noise yesterday, and then they made the noise again. And it was so bad. It sounded like they had been going for months, but I never had any indication until really yesterday. So I parked my car in the center of town and I walked to my chiropractor, and then I forgot that I wanted to go and get an estimate on my brakes. And since I forgot, I went for a walk. And I walked for like, not very long, 15 or 20 minutes in the park, but it's super hot. And I forgot my hat. And I'm, wearing a cover up when I walk around in town. I don't want to go, all spaghetti strap and stuff. So, no big deal. After I, walked and everything, I thought, oh, that's great. I feel good. Now, I'll go home. And then I remembered, oh God, got to go to the shop over there around the corner and ask him about the brakes. And the price on brakes went up so much. Me and my pookies all day. Hi, me and my pookies all day. I'm going to read a story today. I haven't decided yet which one. I was just chit-chatting about my day, waiting to see if people showed up for a live reading. That's kind of mean. Hi, Rajas. Rajas Ebomac. And I'm happy to see me and my pookies all day. But hi, Voy. Hey, Voy, you want to swat down that troll up there for me since you swung through here? I sure would appreciate it. Any tips on how I can get my dad to stop getting super jealous every time my sister and I sleep together? I don't really know. Wow. Thank you, Voy. Much love today. I hope everything's going great over there. So I picked up these two books out of the shelf today because I was so hot after walking around town this morning, and I literally like wiped myself out. Because then once I dropped the car off, I had to start walking home. I totally was like, oh, I didn't even think to call my dad in advance and ask him to come up here and get me. So I walked half the way home, and it's not terribly far, but part of it is straight up a hill. And I don't know, it's got to be in the 90s today. So it was a rough morning. So let's have a fairy tale anyway. Since I got this one in my hand, why don't we start with something by Yeats? Let's see. We don't want to read Parnell's funeral. Nothing about a funeral today. Nah, I don't think I want to read any of those. Why don't we read The Greek Princess and the Gardener? I'm sorry, The Greek Princess and the Young Gardener. There was once a king, but I didn't hear what country he was over, and he had one very beautiful daughter. Well, he was getting old and sickly, and the doctors found out that the finest medicine in the world for him was the apples of a tree that grew in the orchard just under his window. So you may be sure he had the tree well minded and used to get the apples counted from the time they were the size of small marbles. One harvest, just as they were beginning to turn ripe, the king was awakened one night by the flapping of wings outside in the orchard. And when he looked out, what did he see but a bird among the branches of his tree? Its feathers were so bright that they made a light all around them, and the minute it saw the king in his nightcap and nightshirt, it picked off an apple and flew away. "Oh, botheration to that thief of a gardener," says the king. "This is a nice way he's watching my precious fruit." He didn't sleep a wink the rest of the night, and as soon as one was stirring in the palace, he sent for the gardener and abused him for his neglect. "Please, your majesty," says he, "not another apple shall you lose. My 3 sons are the best shots at the bow and arrow in the kingdom, and they and myself will watch in turn every night." When the night came, the gardener's eldest son took his post in the garden, with his bow strung and his arrow between his fingers, and watched and watched. But at the dead hour, the king, that was wide awake, heard the flapping of wings and ran to the window. There was the bright bird in the tree, and the boy fast asleep, sitting with his back to the wall, and his bow on his lap. "Rise, you lazy thief," says the king. "There's the bird again. Botheration to her." Up jumped the poor fellow, but while he was fumbling with the arrow and the string, away was the bird with the nicest apple on the tree. Well, to be sure, how the king fumed and fretted, and how he abused the gardener and the boy, and what a 24 hours he spent till midnight came again. He had his eye this time on the second son of the gardener, but though he was up and lively enough when the clock began to strike 12, it wasn't done with the last bang when he saw him stretched like one dead on the long grass, and saw the bright bird again, and heard the flap of her wings, and saw her carry away the 3rd apple. The poor fellow woke with the roar the king let at him, and even was in time enough to let fly an arrow after the bird. He did not hit her, you may depend, and though the king was mad enough, he saw the poor fellows were under pishtrogs, and could not help it. Well, he had some hopes out of the youngest, for he was a brave, active young fellow that had everybody's good word. There he was ready, and there was the king watching him and talking to him at the first stroke of 12. At the last clang, the brightness coming before the bird lighted up the wall and the trees, and the rushing of the wings was heard as it flew into the branches. But at the same instant, the crack of the arrow on her side might be heard a quarter of a mile off. Down came the arrow, and a large bright feather along with it, and away was the bird, with a screech that was enough to break the drum of your ear. She hadn't time to carry off an apple, and bedad, when the feather was thrown up into the king's room, it was heavier than lead, and turned out to be the finest beaten gold. Well, there was great couramuch made about the youngest boy next day, and he watched night after night for a week, but not a mite of a bird or a bird's feather was to be seen. And then the king told him to go home and sleep. Everyone admired the beauty of the gold feather beyond anything, but the king was fairly bewitched. He was turning it round and rubbing it against his forehead and his nose the livelong day, and at last he proclaimed that he'd give his daughter and half his kingdom to whoever would bring him the bird with the golden feathers, dead or alive. The gardener's eldest son had great conceit of himself, and away he went to look for the bird. In the afternoon he sat down under a tree to rest himself and eat a bit of bread and cold meat that he had in his wallet, when up comes as fine a looking fox as you'd see in the borough of Munfin. "Musha, sir," says he, "would you spare a bit of that meat to a poor body that's hungry?" "Well," says the other, "you must have the devil's own assurance, you common robber, to ask me such a question. Here's the answer." And he let fly at the Madareen Rua. The arrows scraped from his side up over his back as if he was made of hammered iron, and stuck in a tree a couple of perches off. "Foul play," says the fox, "but I respect your young brother, and will give a bit of advice. At nightfall you'll come into a village. One side of the street you'll see a large room lighted up and filled with young men and women dancing and drinking. The other side you'll see a house with no light, only from the fire in the front room, and no one near it but a man and his wife and their child. Take a fool's advice, and get lodging there. With that, he curled his tail over his crupper and trotted off. The boy found things as the fox said, but begonies he chose the dancing and drinking, and there we'll leave him. In a week's time, when they got tired at home waiting for him, the second son said he'd try his fortune, and off he set. He was just as ill-natured and foolish as his brother, and the same thing happened to him. Well, when a week was over, away went the youngest of all, and as sure as the hearth money, he sat under the same tree, and pulled out his bread and meat, and the same fox came up and saluted him. Well, the young fellow shared his dinner with the Moderine, and he wasn't long beating about the bush, but told the other he knew all about his business. "I'll help you," says he, "if I find you're biddable. So just at nightfall, you'll come into a village. Goodbye till tomorrow." It was just as the fox said, but the boy took care not to go near dancer, drinker, fiddler, or piper. He got welcome in the quiet house to supper and bed, and was on his journey next morning before the sun was the height of the trees. He wasn't gone a quarter of a mile when he saw the fox coming out of a wood that was by the roadside. "Good morrow, fox," says one. "Good morrow, sir," says the other. "Have you any notion how far you have to travel till you find the golden bird?" "Dickens a notion have I. How could I?" "Well, I have. She's in the King of Spain's palace, and that's a good 200 miles off." "Oh dear, we'll be a week going." "No, we won't. Sit down on my tail, and we'll soon make the road short." "Tail, indeed! That'd be the droll saddle, my poor Moderine." "Do as I tell you, or I'll leave you to yourself." Well, rather than vex him, he sat down on the tail that was spread out level like a wing, and away they went like thought. They overtook the wind that was before them, and the wind that came after didn't overtake them. In the afternoon they stopped in a wood near the King of Spain's palace, and there they stayed till nightfall. "Now," says the fox, "I'll go before you to make the minds of the guards easy, and you'll have nothing to do but go from lighted hall to another lighted hall till you find the golden bird in the last. If you have a head on you, you'll bring himself in his cage outside the door, and no one then can lay hands on him or you. If you haven't a head, I can't help you, nor no one else." So he went over to the gates. I'm going to do a quick shout out in my chat before I continue reading on. Hello to Baja Slayer, a snowman. Hey, nice to see you again. And everybody else we've done a shout out to. So thank you all for joining. And Marisol, hi. Hope you're enjoying story time today. In a quarter of an hour, the boy followed, and in the first hall he saw a score of armed guards standing upright, but all dead asleep. In the next he saw a dozen, and in the next half a dozen, and in the next 3. And in the room beyond there was no guard at all, nor lamp, nor candle, but it was as bright as day. For there was the golden bird in a common wood and wire cage, and on the table were the 3 apples turned into solid gold. On the same table was the most lovely golden cage I ever beheld, and it entered the boy's head that it would be 1,000 pities not to put the precious bird into it. The common cage was so unfit for her. Maybe he thought of the money it was worth. Anyhow, he made the exchange, and he had soon good reason to be sorry for it. The instant the shoulder of the bird's wing touched the golden wires, he let such a squawk out of him as was enough to break all the panes of glass in the windows, and at the same minute the 3 men, and the half dozen, and the dozen, and the score men woke up and clattered their swords and spears and surrounded the poor boy and jibed and cursed and swore at home till he didn't know whether it's his foot or head he was standing on. They called the king and told him what happened, and he put on a very grim face. "It's on a gibbet you ought to be this moment," says he, "but I'll give you a chance of your life. And of the golden bird, too. I lay you under prohibitions and restrictions and death and destruction to go and bring me the king of Morocco's bay filly that outruns the wind and leaps over the walls of Castle Bonds. When you fetch her into the bawn of this palace, you may get the golden bird and liberty to go where you please." Out passed the boy, very downhearted. But as he went along, who should come out of the brake but the fox again? "Ah, my friend," says he, "I was right when I suspected you hadn't a head on you. But I won't rub your hair against the grain. Get on my tail again, and when we come to the King of Morocco's palace, we'll see what we can do." So away they went like thought. The wind that was before them they would overtake. The wind that was behind them would not overtake them. Well, the nightfall came on them in a wood near the palace, and says the fox, "I'll go and make things easy for you at the stables, and when you are leading out the filly, don't let her touch the door, nor doorposts, nor anything but the ground, and that with her hoofs. And if you haven't a head on you once you are in the stable, you'll be worse off than before." So the boy delayed for a quarter of an hour, and then he went into the big bawn of the palace. There were 2 rows of armed men reaching from the gate to the stable, and every man was in the depth of deep sleep. And through them went the boy, till he got into the stable. There was the filly, as handsome a beast as ever stretched leg, and there was one stable boy with a currycomb in his hand, and another with a bridle, and another with a sieve of oats, and another with an armful of hay, and all as if they were cut out of stone. The filly was the only one thing in the palace except himself. The only live thing in the palace except himself. Excuse me. They had a common wood and leather saddle on her back, but a golden saddle with the nicest work on it was hung from the post, and he thought it the greatest pity not to put it in place of the other. Well, I believe there was some push rogues over it for a saddle. Anyhow, he took off the other and put the gold one in its place. Out came a squeal from the filly's throat when she felt the strange article that might be heard from Tom Brick to Buncloddy, and all at ready were the armed men and the stable boys to run and surround the omadhaun of a boy, and the King of Morocco was soon there along with the rest, with a face on him as black as the sole of your foot. After he stood enjoying the abuse the poor boy got from everybody for some time, he says to him, "You deserve high hanging for your impudence, but I'll give you a chance for your life and the filly too. I lay on you all sorts of prohibitions and restrictions and death and destruction to go. Bring me Princess Golden Locks, the King of Greece's daughter. When you deliver her into my hand, you may have the daughter of the wind, and welcome. Come in and take your supper and rest, and be off at flight of night." The poor boy was down in the mouth, you may suppose, as he was walking away next morning, and very much ashamed when the fox looked up in his face after coming out of the wood. Holy beans and rice! I had to stop for a minute there because I just got the loudest, craziest buzz, like, in my ear. We're reading The Greek Princess. This is a collection of Celtic fairy tales collected by Joseph Jacobs. I've had this one in my collection, oh my gosh, I don't know how long. This one I've managed to keep for years. Wow, I'm sorry, I had to stop for a minute because that was so loud, whatever that was. Okay. He was very much ashamed when the fox looked up in his face after coming up out of the wood. "What a thing it is," says he, "not to have a head when a body wants it worst. And here we have a fine long journey before us to the King of Greece's palace. The worst luck now, the same always. Here, get on my tail, and we'll be making the road shorter." So he sat on the fox's tail, and swift as thought they went. The wind that was before them, they would overtake it. The wind that was behind them would not overtake them. And in the evening they were eating their bread and cold meat in the wood near the castle. "Now," says the fox, when they were done, "I'll go before you to make things easy. Follow me in a quarter of an hour. Don't let Princess Goldenlocks touch the jambs of the doors with her hands, or hair, or clothes, and if you're asked any favor, mind how you answer. Once she's outside the door, no one can take her from you." Into the palace walked the boy at the proper time, and there were the score, and the dozen, and the half-dozen, and the 3 guards all standing up or leaning on their arms, and all dead asleep. And in the farthest room of all was the Princess Goldenlocks, as lovely as Venus herself. She was asleep in one chair, and her father, the king of Greek, in another. He stood before her for ever so long, with the love sinking deeper into his heart every minute, till at last he went down on one knee and took her darling white hand in his and kissed it. When she opened her eyes, she was a little frightened, but I believe not very angry, for the boy, as I call him, was a fine, handsome young fellow, and all the respect and love that ever you could think of was in his face. She asked him what he wanted, and he stammered and blushed and began his story 6 times before she understood it. "And would you give me up to that ugly black king of Morocco?" says she. "I'm obliged to do so," says he. My prohibitions and restrictions and death and destruction, but I'll have his life and free you, or lose my own. If I can't get you for my wife, my days on the earth shall be short." "Well," says she, "let me take leave of my father at any rate." "Ah, I can't do that," says he, "or they'd all waken, and myself would be put to death, or sent to some task worse before than any I got yet." But she asked leave at any rate to kiss the old man. That wouldn't waken him, and then she'd go. How could he refuse her, and his heart tied up in every curl of her hair? But, bedad, the moment her lips touched her father's, he let out a cry, and every one of the score, the dozen guards, woke up, and clashed their arms, and were going to make gibbets of the foolish boy. But the king ordered them to hold their hands till he'd be incensed of what it was all about. And when he heard the boy's story, he gave him a chance for his life. Damn, dude. "There is," says he, "a great heap of clay in front of the palace that won't let the sun shine on the walls in the middle of summer. Everyone that ever worked at it found 2 shovelfuls added to it for every one they threw away. Remove it, and I'll let my daughter go with you. If you're the man I suspect you to be, I think she'll be in no danger of being wife to that yellow mullet." Early next morning was the boy tackled to his work, and for every shovelful he flung away 2 came back on him, and at last he could hardly get out of the heap that gathered round him. Well, the poor fellow scrambled out some way and sat down on a sod, and he'd have cried only for the shame of it. He began at it in ever so many places, and one was still worse than the other, and in the heel of the evening, when he was sitting with his head between his hands, who should be standing before him but the fox. "Well, my poor fellow," says he, "you're low enough. Go in. I won't say anything to add to your trouble. Take your supper and your rest. Tomorrow will be a new day." "How is the work going off?" says the king, when they were at supper. "Faith, your majesty," says the poor boy, "it's not going off, but coming on it is. I suppose you'll have the trouble of digging me out at sunset tomorrow and waking me." "I hope not," says the princess with a smile on her kind face, and the boy was as happy as anything the rest of the evening. He was wakened up next morning with voices shouting, and bugles blowing, and drums beating, and such a hullabaloo he never heard in his life before. He ran out to see what was the matter, and there, where the heap of clay was the evening before, were soldiers and servants and lords and ladies dancing like mad for joy that it was gone. "Ah, my poor fox," says he to himself, "this is your work." Well, there was little delay about his return. The king was going to send a great retinue with the princess and himself, but he wouldn't let him take the trouble. "I have a friend," says he, "that will bring us both to the king of Morocco's palace in a day." Why is it like this? D, fly away with him. The whole word is blanked out. It just says D blank blank blank, fly away with him. Okay. There was great crying when she was parting from her father. "Ah," says he, "what a lonesome life I'll have now. Your poor brother in the power of that wicked witch, and kept away from us, and now you taken from me in my old age." Well, they both were walking on through the wood, and he telling her how much he loved her. Out walked the fox from behind a brake, and in a short time he and she were sitting on the brush and holding one another fast for fear of slipping off. And away they went like thought. The wind that was before them, they would overtake it, and in the evening he and she were in the big bawn of the king of Morocco's castle. "Well," says he to the boy, "you've done your duty well. Bring out the bay filly. I'd give the full of the bawn of such fillies, if I had them, for this handsome princess. Get on your steed, and here is a good purse of guineas for the road." "Thank you," says he. I suppose you'll let me shake hands with the princess before I start." "Yes, indeed, and welcome." Well, he was some little time about the handshaking, and before it was over he had her fixed snug behind him, and while you could count 3, he and she and the filly were through all the guards, and 100 perches away. On they went, and next morning they were in the wood near the King of Spain's palace, and there was the fox before them. "Leave your princess here with me," says he, "and go get the golden bird and the 3 apples. If you don't bring us back the filly along with the bird, I must carry you both home myself." Well, when the King of Spain saw the boy and the filly in the bawn, he made the golden bird and the golden cage and the golden apples be brought out and handed to him, and was very thankful and very glad of his prize. But the boy could not part with the nice beast without petting it and rubbing it, and while no one was expecting such a thing, he was up on its back and through the guards and 100 perches away, and he wasn't long till he came to where he left his princess and the fox. They hurried away till they were safe out of the King of Spain's land, and then they went on easier, and if I was to tell you all the loving things they'd say to one another, the story wouldn't be over until morning. When they were passing the village of the dance house, they found his 2 brothers begging, and they brought them along. When they came to where the fox appeared first, he begged the young man to cut off his head and his tail. He would not do it for him. He shivered at the very thought, but the eldest brother was ready enough. The head and tail vanished with the blows, and the body changed into the finest young man you could see. And who was he but the princess's brother that was bewitched? Whatever joy they had before, they had twice as much now. And when they arrived at the palace, bonfires were set to blazing, oxes roasting, and puncheons of wine put out in the lawn. The young prince of Greece was married to the king's daughter, and the prince's sister to the gardener's son. He and she went a shorter way back to her father's house, with many attendants, and the king was so glad of the golden bird and the golden apples that he had sent a wagon full of gold and a wagon full of silver along with them. The end. Oh, thank God that one had a happy ending. Whew. Every time I run up against golden birds and stuff, I get like, prepared. Prepare yourself, it might be a bumpy story. We all love happy endings, yay. So it looks like we still have a few people listening. Let's see. What would be another decent story to read today? A lot of stories about princesses. They're all about princesses. Yeah. How about... Shoot. What do we got? I want one that I haven't read before and don't remember. Because I think I got this book when I was in my teens. I think I bought it at a library sale. So I've probably read it a million times throughout the years, but I don't even remember the stories now, so gotta read them all again. How about this one? I don't remember this one at all, but there's an illustration of little gnomes, so it's gotta be good, right? We love gnomes! Do you know my name? It's gonna be fun. This one's called Elidor. The days of Henry Beauclerk of England, there was a little lad named Elidor, who was being brought up to be a cleric. Day after day, he would trudge from his mother's house, and she was a widow, up to the monk's scriptorium. There he would learn his ABCs, and to read and to write it. But he was a lazy little rogue, was this Elidor, and as fast as he learned to write one letter, he forgot another. So it was very little progress he was making. I feel like Elidor. And I don't think it's my fault, like, out of laziness, though. I think my brain is just getting overloaded. Now when the good monks saw this, they remembered the saying of the book, "Spare the rod and spoil the child." and whenever Elidor forgot a letter, they tried to make him remember it with a rod. At first they used it seldom and lightly, but Elidor was not a boy to be driven, and the more they thwacked him, the less he learned. So the thwackings became more frequent and more severe, till Elidor could not stand them any longer. I got a spider in my book. So one day, when he was 12 years old, he upped with them and offed with him into the great forest near St. David's. There for 2 long days and 2 long nights he wandered about, eating nothing but hips and haws. At last he found himself at the mouth of a cave, at the side of a river, and there he sank down, all tired and exhausted. Suddenly 2 little pygmies appeared to him and said, "Come with us, and we will lead you into a land full of games and sports." So Elidor raised himself and went with these 2. At first, through an underground passage, all in the dark. But soon they came out into a most beautiful countries, with rivers and meadows, woods and plains, as pleasant as can be. Only this there was curious about it, that the sun never shone, and the clouds were always over the sky, so that neither sun was seen by day, nor moon and stars at night. The 2 little men led Elidor before them, before their king, who asked why and whence he came. Elidor told him, and the king said, "Thou shalt attend on my son," and waved him away. So for a long time Elidor waited on the king's son, and joined in all the games and sports of the little men. They were little, but they were not dwarfs, for all their limbs were of suitable size to one another. Their hair was fair, and hung upon their shoulders like that of women. They had little horses about the size of greyhounds, and did not eat flesh, fowl, or fish, but lived on milk and flavored with saffron. And as they had such curious ways, so they had strange thoughts. No oath took they, but never a lie they spoke. They would jeer and scoff at men for their struggles, lying and treachery. Yet though they were so good, they worshipped none, unless you might say they were worshippers of truth. Snap! I'm glad we decided to read this today. This is good. After a time, Elidor began to long to see boys and men of his own size, and he begged permission to go and visit his mother. So the king gave him permission. So the little men led him along the passage and guided him through the forest, till he came near his mother's cottage, and when he entered, was not she rejoiced to see her dear son again? "Where have you been, and what have you done?" she cried, and he had to tell her all that had happened to him. She begged of him to stay with her, but he had promised the king to go back, and soon he returned, after making his mother promise not to tell where he was or with whom. Henceforth Elidor lived partly with the little men and partly with his mother. Now one day, when he was with his mother, he told her of the yellow balls they used in their play, and which she felt must be made of gold. So she begged of him that the next time he came back to her he would bring with him one of these balls. When the time came for him to go back to his mother again, he did not wait for the little men to guide him back, as he now knew the road, but seizing one of the yellow balls with which he used to play, he rushed home through the passage. Now, as he got near his mother's house, he seemed to hear tiny footsteps behind him, and he rushed up to the door as quickly as he could. Just as he reached it, his foot slipped, and he fell down, and the ball rolled out of his hand, just to the feet of his mother. At that moment 2 little men rushed forward, seized the ball, and ran away, making faces and spitting at the boy as they passed him. Elidor remained with his mother for a time, but he missed the play and games of the little men, and determined to go back to them. But when he came to where the cave had been, near the river where the underground passage commenced, he could not find it again. And though he searched again and again in the years to come, he could not get back to that fair country. So after a time he went back to the monastery, and became in due course a monk. And men used to come and seek him out and ask him what had happened to him when he was in the land of the little men. Nor could he ever speak of that happy time without shedding tears. Now it happened once, when this Elidor was old, that David, Bishop of St. David's, came to visit his monastery and ask him about the manners and customs of the little men, and above all, he was curious to know what language they spoke. And Elidor told him some of their words. When they asked for water, they would say, "Udor, udorum," and when they wanted salt, they would say, "Hapru udorum." And from this, the bishop, who was a learned man, discovered that they spoke some sort of Greek, for Udor is Greek for water and Hap for salt. So I probably said them both wrong, sorry. Hence we know that the Britons came from Troy, being descendants from Brito, son of Priam, king of Troy. The end. It's an interesting one. Let's see what else we got here. I should start marking which ones I've already read so that I don't read them twice if I ever read out of this book again. So let's mark that one. And yep, I'm putting creases in my storybook pages. Calamity! I know everybody's just, some people are just freaking out. But I do that to my books. Some of these books even have coffee stains in them. I like that. Some of these are really short, so let's read How Finn Went to the Kingdom of the Big Men. Finn and his men were in the harbor of the hill of Hoth, on a hillock, behind the wind and in front of the sun, where they could see every person and nobody could see them, when they saw a speck coming from the west. They thought at first it was the blackness of a shower, but when it came nearer they saw it was a boat. It did not lower sail till it entered the harbor. There were 3 men in it, one for guide in the bow, one for steering in the stern, and one for the tackle in the center. They came ashore and drew it up 7 times its own length in dry gray grass, where the scholars of the city could make it stock for derision or ridicule. They then went up to a lovely green spot, and the first lifted a handful of round pebbles or shingle and commanded them to become a beautiful house, that no better could be found in Ireland. And this was done. The second one lifted a slab of slate, and commanded it to be slate on the top of the house, that there was no better in Ireland. And this was done. The third one caught a bunch of shavings, and commanded them to be pine wood and timber in the house, that there was none in Ireland better. And this was done. This caused much wonder to Finn, who went down where the men were, and made inquiries of them, and they answered him. He asked whence they were, or whither they were going. They said, We are 3 heroes whom the king of the big men has sent to ask combat of the Fians. He then asked, What was the reason for doing this? They said they did not know, but they heard that they were strong men, and they came to ask combat of heroes from them. Is Finn at home? They asked. He is not. Great is a man's leaning toward his own life. Finn then put them under crosses and under enchantments, that they were not to move from the place where they were till they saw him again. He went away and made ready his coracle, gave its stern to land and prow to sea, hoisted the spotted towering sails against the long, tough, lance-shaped mast, cleaving the billows in the embrace of the wind in whirls, with a soft, gentle breeze from the height of the sea-coast, and from the rapid tide of the red rocks, that would take whilom from the hill, foliage from the tree, and heather from its stalk and roots. Finn was guide in her prow, helm in her stern, and tackle in her middle, and stopping of head or foot he did not make till he reached the kingdom of the big men. He went ashore and drew up his coracle in gray grass. He went up, and a big wayfarer met him. Finn asked who he was. I am, he said, the red-haired coward of the king of the big men. And, said he to Finn, you are the one I am in quest of. Great is my esteem and respect toward you. You are the best maiden I have ever seen. You will yourself make a dwarf for the king. And your dog, this was Bran, a lapdog. It is long since the king has been in want of a dwarf and a lapdog. He took with him Finn, but another big man came, and was going to take Finn from him. The 2 fought, but when they had torn each other's clothes, they left it to Finn to judge. He chose the first one. He took Finn with him to the palace of the king, whose worthies and high nobles assembled to see the little man. The king lifted him upon the palm of his hand, and went 3 times round the town with Finn upon one palm, and Bran upon the other. He made a sleeping place for him at the end of his own bed. Finn was waiting, watching, and observing everything that was going on about the house. He observed that the king, as soon as night came, rose and went out, and returned no more till morning. This caused him much wonder, and at last he asked the king why he went away every night and left the queen by herself. "Why," said the king, "do you ask?" "For satisfaction to myself," said Finn, "for it is causing me much wonder." Now the king had a great liking for Finn. He never saw anything that gave him more pleasure than he did, and at last he told him, "There is," he said, "a great monster who wants my daughter in marriage, and to have half my kingdom to himself, and there is not another man in the kingdom who can meet him but myself, and I must go every night to hold combat with him." "Is there," said Finn, "no man to combat with him but yourself?" "There is not," said the king, "one who will war with him for a single night." "It is a pity," said Finn, "that this should be called the kingdom of the big man. Is he bigger than yourself?" "Never you mind," said the king. "I will mind," said Finn. "Take your rest and sleep tonight, and I shall go to meet him." "Is it you?" said the king. "You would not keep half a stroke against him." When night came, and all men went to rest, the king was for going away as usual, but Finn at last prevailed upon him to allow himself to go. "I shall combat him," said he, "or else he knows a trick." "I think much," said the king, "of allowing you to go, seeing he gives myself enough to do." "Sleep you soundly tonight," said Finn, "and let me go. If he comes too violently upon me, I shall hasten home." Finn went and reached the place where the combat was to be. He saw no one before him, and he began to pace backwards and forwards. At last he saw the sea coming in kilns of fire and as darting serpent, till it came down below where he was. A huge monster came up and looked towards him and from him. "What little speck do I see there?" he said. "It is I," said Finn. "What are you doing here?" "I am a messenger from the king of the big men. He is under much sorrow and distress. The queen has just died, and I have come to ask if you will be so good as to go home tonight without giving trouble to the kingdom." "I shall do that," said he, and he went away with the rough humming of a song in his mouth. Finn went home when the time came and lay down in his own bed at the foot of the king's bed. When the king awoke, he cried out in great anxiety, "My kingdom is lost, and my dwarf and my lapdog are killed." "They are not," said Finn. "I am here yet, and you have got your sleep, a thing you were saying it was rare for you to get." "How," said the king, "did you escape when you are so little, while he is enough for myself, though I am so big?" "Though you," said Finn, "are so big and strong, I am quick and active." The next night the king was for going, but Finn told him to take his sleep tonight again. "I shall stand myself in your place, or else a better hero than yonder one must come." "He will kill you," said the king. "I shall take my chance," said Finn. "Hi, ants! Good to see you. We're just having casual story time today." He went, and as happened the night before, he saw no one, and he began to pace backwards and forwards. He saw the sea coming in fiery kilns, and as a darting serpent, and that huge man came up. "Are you here tonight again?" said he. "I am, and this is my errand. When the queen was being put in the coffin, and the king heard the coffin being nailed, and the joiner's stroke, he broke his heart with pain and grief, and the Parliament has sent me to ask you to go home tonight till they get the king buried." The monster went this night also, roughly humming a song, and Finn went home when the time came. In the morning the king awoke in great anxiety and called out, "My kingdom is lost, and my dwarf and my lapdog are killed." And he greatly rejoiced that Finn and Bran were alive, and that he himself got rest after being so long without sleep. Finn went the third night, and things happened as before. There was no one before him, and he took to pacing to and fro. He saw the sea coming till it came down below him. The big monster came up. He saw the little black speck and asked who was there and what he wanted. "I have come to combat you," said Finn. Finn and Bran began the combat. Finn was going backwards, and the huge man was following. Finn called to Bran, "Are you going to let him kill me?" Bran had a venomous shoe, and he leaped and struck the huge man with the venomous shoe on the breastbone, and took the heart and lungs out of him. Finn drew his sword, Macaluan, cut off his head, put it on a hempen rope, and went with it to the palace of the king. He took it into the kitchen and put it behind the door. In the morning, the servant could not turn it nor open the door. The king went down. He saw the huge mass, caught it by the top of the head, and lifted it, and knew it was the head of the man who was for so long a time asking combat from him and keeping him from sleep. "How at all," said he, "has this head come here? Surely it is not my dwarf that has done it." "Why," said Finn, "should he not?" Next night the king wanted to go himself to the place of combat, "Because," said he, "a bigger one than the former will come tonight, and the kingdom will be destroyed, and you yourself killed, and I shall lose the pleasure I take in having you with me." But Finn went, and that big man came, asking vengeance for his son, and to have the kingdom for himself, or equal combat. He and Finn fought, and Finn was going backwards. He spoke to Bran, "Are you going to allow him to kill me?" Bran whined, and went and sat down on the bench. Finn was ever being driven back, and he called out again to Bran. Then Bran jumped and struck the big man with the venomous shoe, and took the heart and lungs out of him. Finn cut the head off, and took it with him, and left it in front of the house. The king awoke in great terror, and cried out, "My kingdom is lost, and my dwarf and my lapdog are killed." Finn raised himself up and said, "They are not." And the king's joy was not small when he went out and saw the head that was in front of the house. The next night a big hag came ashore, and the tooth in the door of her mouth would make a distaff. She sounded a challenge on her shield. "You killed my husband and my son." "I did kill them," said Finn. They fought, and it was worse for Finn to guard himself from the tooth than from the hand of the big hag. When she had nearly done for him, Bran struck her with the venomous shoe and killed her, as he had done to the rest. Finn took with him the head and left it in front of the house. The king awoke in great anxiety and called out, "My kingdom is lost, and my dwarf and my lapdog are killed." "They are not," said Finn, answering him. And when they went out and saw the head, the king said, "I and my kingdom will have peace ever after this. The mother herself of the brood is killed. But tell me who you are. It was foretold for me that it would be Finn MacCool that would give me relief, and he is only now 18 years of age. Who are you then, or what is your name?" "There never stood," said Finn, "on hide of cow or horse, one to whom I would deny my name. I am Finn, the son of Cool, son of Luach, son of Train, son of Finn, son of Art, son of the young high king of Erin, and it is time for me now to go home. It has been with much wandering out of my way that I have come to your kingdom, and this is the reason why I have come, that I might find out what injury I have done to you, or the reason why you sent the 3 heroes to ask combat from me, and bring destruction on my men." "You never did any injury to me," said the king, "and I ask 1,000 pardons. I did not send the heroes to you. It is not the truth they told. They were 3 men who were courting 3 fairy women, and these gave them their shirts. And when they have on their shirts, the combat of 100 men is upon the hand of every one of them. But they must put off the shirts every night and put them on the backs of chairs. And if the shirts were taken from them, they would be next day as weak as other people." Finn got every honor and all that the king could give him, and when he went away, the king and the queen and the people went down to the shore to give him their blessing. Finn now went away in his coracle, and was sailing close by the side of the shore when he saw a young man running and calling out to him. Finn came in close to land with his coracle, and asked what he wanted. "I am," said the young man, "a good servant wanting a master." "What work can you do?" said Finn. "I am," said he, "the best soothsayer that there is." "Jump into the boat, then." The soothsayer jumped in, and they went forward. They did not go far when another youth came running. "I am," he said, "a good servant wanting a master." "What work can you do?" said Finn. "I am as good a thief as there is." "Jump into the boat, then," said Finn, and he took with him this one also. They saw then a third young man running and calling out. They came close to land. "What man are you?" said Finn. "I am," said he, "the best climber that there is. I will take up 100 pounds on my back in a place where a fly could not stand on a calm summer day. Jump in." And this one came in also. "I have my pick of servants now," said Finn. "It cannot be, but these will suffice." They went, and stop of head or foot they did not make till they reached the harbor of the Hill of the Howth. He asked the soothsayer what the three big men were doing. "They are," he said, "after their supper and making ready for going to bed." He asked a second time. "They are," he said, "after going to bed, and their shirts are spread on the backs of chairs." After a while, Finn asked him again, "What are the big men doing now?" Sorry, let me adjust my blanket. I'm trying to make sure that I don't have visual gaps. After a while, Finn asked him again, "What are the big men doing now?" "They are," said the soothsayer, "sound asleep. It would be a good thing if there was now a thief to go and steal the shirts." "I would do that," said the thief, "but the doors are locked and I cannot get in." He took him up upon his back to the top of the chimney and let him down, and he stole the shirts. Finn went where the Fian band was, and in the morning they came to the house where the three big men were. They sounded a challenge upon their shields and asked them to come out to combat. They came out. "Many a day," said they, "have we been better for combat than we are today." And they confessed to Finn everything as it was. "You were," said Finn, "impertinent, but I will forgive you." And he made them swear that they would be faithful to himself ever after, and ready in every enterprise he would place before them. The end. I don't know if I feel like reading another or not. That's a short one. Let's see. Ooh. There's something wrong with this book. I don't know. At the back, it says, "Man or woman, boy or girl, that reads what follows 3 times shall fall asleep 100 years." So I'm not going to read what follows. I'm not going back to sleep for 100 years. Are you kidding me? I've been asleep long enough. I might still be. I'm still half sleepy. You know what I mean? I can tell. It's ticking me off. I've got a memory hole. And I'm aware that there's a memory hole, and it's ticking me off. I might as well go again for another one. Let's see how long this one is. This one's only like 3 pages. Let's read one more. The Dream of Owen Mulready. There was a man long ago living near Balagdareen named Owen Mulready, who was a workman for the gentleman of the place, and was a prosperous, quiet, contented man. There was no one but himself and his wife Margaret, and they had a nice little house and enough potatoes in the year, in addition to their share of wages from their master. There wasn't a want or anxiety on Owen, except one desire, and that was to have a dream, for he had never had one. One day when he was digging potatoes, his master, James Taft, came out to his ridge, and they began talking, as was the custom with them. The talk fell on dreams, and said Owen that he would like better than anything if he could have only one. "You'll have one tonight," says his master, "if you do as I tell you." "Musha, I shall do it, and welcome," says Owen. "Now," says his master, "when you go home tonight, draw the fire from the hearth, put it out, make your bed in its place, and sleep there tonight, and you'll get your enough of dreams before the morning." Owen promised to do this. When, however, he began to draw the fire out, Margaret thought that he had lost his senses, so he explained everything James Taft had said to him, had on his way, and they went to lie down together on the hearth. Not long was Owen asleep when there came a knock at the door. "Get up, Owen Mulready, and go with a letter from the master to America." Owen got up and put his feet into his boots, saying to himself, "It's late you come, messenger." He took the letter, and he went forward and never tarried till he came to the foot of Slea Cairn, I may not have said that right, where he met a cowboy, and he herding cows. "The blessing of God be with you, Owen Mulready," says the boy. "The blessing of God and Mary be with you, my boy," says Owen. "Everyone knows me, and I don't know anyone at all." "Where are you going this time of night?" says the boy. "I'm going to America with a letter from the master." "Is this the right road?" says Owen. "It is. Keep straight to the west, but how are you going to get over the water?" says the boy. "Time enough to think of that when I get to it," replied Owen. He went on the road again till he came to the brink of the sea, where he saw a crane standing on one foot on the shore. "The blessing of God be with you, Owen Mulready," says the crane. "The blessing of God and Mary be with you, Mrs. Crane," says Owen. "Everybody knows me, and I don't know anyone. What are you doing here?" she asks. Owen told her his business, and that he didn't know how he'd get over the water. "Leave your 2 feet on my 2 wings, and sit on my back, and I'll take you to the other side," says the crane. "What would I do if tiredness should come on you before we get over?" says Owen. "Don't be afraid. I won't be tired or wearied till I fly over." Then Owen went on the back of the crane, and she arose over the sea and went forward. But she hadn't flown more than halfway when she cried out, "Owen, oh Mulready, get off me, I'm tired." "That you may be 7 times worse this day 12 months, you rogue of a crane," says Owen. "I can't get off you now, so don't ask me." "I don't care," replied the crane, "if you'll rise off me a while till I can take a rest." With that they saw threshers over their heads, and Owen shouted, "Och, thresher, thresher, leave down your flail at me, that I may give the crane a rest." The thresher left down the flail, but when Owen took a hold with his 2 hands, the crane went from him, laughing and mocking. "My share of misfortunes go with you," said Owen. "It's you've left me in a fix, hanging between the heavens and the water in the middle of a great sea." It wasn't long till the thresher shouted to him to leave go the flail. "I won't let it go," said Owen. "Shan't I be drowned?" "If you don't let go, I'll cut the wang." "I don't care," says Owen. "I'll have the flail." And with that he looked away from him, and what should he see but a boat a long way off. "Oh, sailor, dear sailor, come, come, perhaps you'll take my lot of bones," said Owen. "Are we under you now?" says the sailor. Not yet," says Owen. "Fling down one of your shoes till we see the way it falls," says the captain. Owen shook one foot, and down fell the shoe. Ool, 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 pool, ool, ool. Who is killing me? Came a scream from Margaret in the bed. Where are you, Owen? I didn't know whether 'twas you were it. I didn't know whether 'twas you were in it, Margaret. Indeed, then it is, says she. Who else would it be? She got up and lit the candle. She found Owen halfway up the chimney, climbing by the hands on the crook, and he black with soot. He had one shoe on, but the point of the other struck Margaret, and 'twas that which awoke her. Owen came down off the crook and washed himself, and from that out there was no envy on him ever to have a dream again. Some of these stories are so weird. I see why I liked them when I was younger, though. I see the allure. They're kind of funny. Yeah, I think I'm going to call it done. Although I don't really have anything to do now. Hi, Mojo Shop. Just got back from shopping. I've just been sitting here reading. It looks like I've been reading for a full hour. Random selections from More Celtic Fairy Tales by Joseph Jacobs. So, if you're taking a drive or anything today and you want to rewind to the beginning and hear some stories, they were pretty good. Not bad stories for today on a Monday. Just kicking it, killing time. Oh my God, I wore myself out so bad with that walk in this heat. That was just absent-minded of me to not arrange a ride in advance. But good exercise, and maybe I should eat. So, additional shout out and thank you to everyone who stopped by today for a little bit of story time, and viewers in the future, I hope you enjoy this random selection of Celtic fairy tales. Hola and much love and best wishes to me and my pookies all day. Rajesh Iboman, Mr. Boy, Tommy in Slovakia. Thank you for spreading some love and positivity. That is always appreciated here. And I hope that you enjoy some of my stories in the days to come. Snowman, Baja Slayer, Marisol Tribe, Caitlin Cross. Hi. I don't remember if I've seen you before, but nice to see you today. Ants and Mojo Shop. Best wishes for a great Monday, y'all. Hang in there. Everything feels calmer in the ethers today, that's for sure. So I hope you're all doing well, and see you later.